Hey guys, welcome to another video. In today's video, we'll be working on my dad's 1998 Dodge Ram 24 valve Cummins turbo diesel. What I've been working on is a lot of front end stuff. I got the driver's side done, more specifically kind of the Dana 60 spindle side of things, like your U-joint, your ball joints. I did a wheel bearing and a rotor, and then I'm doing brake pad. So kind of everything you got to replace that wears out on these Dana 60s. And if you have a Ford, it'll be basically the same process because they both have Dana 60s, but your hub's gonna be a little different, but it's still gonna be basically the same process to get it out. And I'll also show you later in this video how to press the lugs into the rotor. I already filmed that because I am not gonna replace the wheel bearing and the rotor on the passenger side because that's good. So guys, there's gonna be a ton of information in this video. I'm gonna make sure to timestamp everything just in case you just maybe wanna see the ball joint process, or you maybe just wanna see how to do your brake pads and all that good stuff. So I'll make sure to timestamp everything. There's gonna be a lot of information in here, so just bear with me. But we got a lot to cover, so we better get going. All right, so the vehicle is jacked up and safely on the jack stand. We'll start by taking the wheel off. And the lugs are a 24 millimeter. And right off the bat, I noticed the brake pads are just about shot. They're pretty close to wearing out this rotor. There's a little bit of wear on it, but it should be fine. Next, we'll just go ahead and take the caliper off. There's just two bolts here. There's one on top and then one right there, and that's just a 3/8 Allen wrench. And what I like to do is I like to hang the caliper up with zip ties just right on the upper control arm there. Works pretty good, and you don't put any stress on your brake line. Just like that. The next thing I'm going to do is remove the axle nut, and the size of that is an 1 11/16 or a 43 millimeter. I bought this socket specifically for taking off these axle nuts on these Dodge Rams. I ordered it off Amazon. I can't remember what I paid for it, probably 20-30 bucks, but it's definitely worth it. I've used it a lot. And we're just gonna use it on the Milwaukee. It's a 1/2 inch anvil size, so we'll just put this on the Milwaukee and it should be able to take it off no problem. It hasn't failed me yet. If you do not have a Milwaukee or a big impact, you're gonna have to put a bar through your wheel studs and use a big breaker bar and probably a big pipe. And we also got to take out that cotter pin before we start actually loosening this up, so let's do that next. It actually came a lot easier than I thought. That's what she said. All right, moment of truth. Will the Milwaukee 1/2 inch impact take off this axle nut? We'll find out right now. That is just flipping impressive. If you don't have one of these, get one. So the next thing we're gonna do is remove the 4 bolts that actually hold the hub to the spindle, and they are located right behind the hub. There's one on the bottom there, and there's one above it. And then same goes on the other side. There's one over there, if you can see it. Right there, and then on top. So 4 bolts, pretty easy. In order to get those, you're gonna need a 12.14 millimeter socket. And just for better access, I'm gonna go ahead and turn the wheel all the way to the right and get the 2 on this side, and then we'll go all the way to the left and get the 2 on that side, just to make it easier for us. And guys, these bolts are normally pretty in there, so I'm going to be using this pipe on the end of my ratchet to get more leverage, and they should break free. And yes, I am using a 3/8 drive ratchet because unfortunately I don't have a 12.14 millimeter in 1/2 inch. All my sockets are 6 point. There it goes. So we got these 2 off this side. We're going to go ahead and turn the wheel the other way so we can get the other 2. I think you guys know what we're doing here, so I'll just go ahead and do that off camera to speed things up a little bit. Next, what I want to do is take off this bracket that's holding our ABS line, and then I'll just take off these clamps so we have some play, so when I take the hub off, I'm not pulling on anything, and we can just set it aside. Alright, so I got my bracket off, and I took the clamp off our brake line. If you are replacing your wheel bearing, I'd just go with the whole hub assembly, which I think most people do. But if you're replacing your wheel bearing and you're putting a new hub assembly on, you're gonna wanna take this line off completely. There's a bolt right there that holds on a bracket, and just keep following the line. It's clamped right there. And then there's another bolt right there. And then if you go open the hood on the pickup on the inside with the fender well, you'll see where it comes up, and there's a harness right there where you just unplug it right off the fender, and you can pull that whole wire down if you are replacing the wheel bearing, which I did do on that side. But on this side, this wheel bearing's good. We're gonna leave it alone. All right, so at this point, our hub is ready to come off. We got our 4 bolts out from the back. We got our axle nut off. We got our ABS line loose. So this thing is ready to come out. But this next part in this video is really important. It'll save you 2 hours trying to beat the hell out of this thing to get it off, because it is rusted in there, it's pressed in there, it's really tough. So with that being said, how are we gonna get this off without beating the hell out of it or heating it up with a torch? I'll tell you. We're gonna be using the vehicle's power steering system to press the hub right off. So I'll show you how we're gonna do that. So the first thing we wanna do is grab one of the 4 bolts that we just took out from the back of the hub. And we're gonna go ahead and thread it on the top hole towards the back. And you want to thread it about 1 inch, just so it's not touching the spindle. It's got maybe 1/2 inch of space. And then we're going to want to grab a 1/2 inch extension, and basically we're going to lodge it from the top of the bolt head to the frame, and then we'll steer the wheels to the right, and it should pop it right out. So now I have my extension in position right there, and then if you can see that, it's resting right on top of that bolt head. Alright guys, so it turns out we got a couple dead batteries here in the pickup, so as we wait for the batteries to charge up, I just want to go ahead and remind you guys to hit the subscribe button. I got a lot of videos soon to be coming out, got a lot of projects going on. I'm just about done sanding and doing body work to my 98.5 24 valve Cummins, and we're going to be putting a fresh coat of paint on it here pretty quick. And then I also recently bought a 95 12 valve, and I really want to do a Cummins swap into something here pretty soon. So guys, make sure you subscribe and don't miss out on any of that. Alright, so this one's pretty well in there. I did get it a little bit, but it's still caught up. So now I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm going to do it on this bottom bolt hole instead. And then that way, you should be able to get it now. You can see right there, it's split off the top, but we're still kind of hung up in the bottom. Make sure you pay attention to how your ABS line routes in your hub. You can kind of see how it works. You want to make sure when you put your hub back on that your ABS line is facing towards the top. That's really important, and it'll save you a couple headaches of taking this baby off and putting it back on if you put it in wrong. My axle wants to come out with it. And then our axle can just come right out. Next we'll take the tie rod off. Get the cotter pin out first. And using a 21mm, we'll go ahead and zip it off real quick. Next we'll take the nut off our upper ball joint. Well, looks like I broke my cotter pin, but that's fine. My Milwaukee should be able to zip it right off even with the cotter pin through it still. So just hammer it so my socket can fit on it, and I think the Milwaukee will be able to shear that cotter pin right off. That is impressive. I'll just show you guys. The Milwaukee just seared that cotter pin right off. Didn't even phase it. And then now we'll get our lower ball joint nut off, and then we'll take the spindle off. And this one's 1 5/16 inch I found work. I'm going to have to use my cheater bar. Oh, that one's tough. So we got both our nuts off. At this point, we get to have a little bit of fun with the hammer. You can just beat it right here and right there, and it'll just fall right out. I'll show you. Now we're ready to take this over to the bench and replace our ball joints. Alright, so we're over at the bench here. As you can see, our upper ball joint is definitely worn out, and our lower is just about there too. So we're going to go ahead, press these out, and put the new ones in. So I'll start out by pressing out the lower ball joint, but first we got to take that snap ring off. So once you get the snap ring out, we're going to press the lower ball joint towards that way. Obviously, because the snap ring was there, we're going that way with it, and then the upper will go in the same direction. And the ball joint press I'll be using is the OTC kit. I got it off Amazon at a pretty reasonable price, and I use it quite a bit, so it's definitely worth getting. So there's what you get. Pretty good kit. Also got this Astro 7868 ball joint expansion kit. Really comes in handy. Gives you tons of options. I'll leave the Amazon link in the description for you guys if you're interested in checking out these kits. So you're going to want to go in your kit and find a piece that will fit around the ball joint without touching it, being that we're pressing it this way. You want the ball joint to end up inside of this piece. And you're also dealing with the threads of the ball joint. Once you press it, the threads will come out, so you want this hollow piece. And make sure when you're pressing it that the threads go through it. And obviously this upper piece on our press is hollow, so the threads will go through that. And basically, we're just going to get it all set up. Alright, now that we're set up, we can start pressing. And never use an impact with a ball joint press, but do as I say and not as I do. And there we go, guys. Lower ball joint's out. Let's go ahead and get the upper one out. And we're just going to use the same technique that we did with the lower one. Basically the same setup. Got your thread right there. If you guys can see that poking out. And then you want to take your press and go through the lower ball joint hole. That way we're nice and straight when we're pressing this out. Alright, so now we're ready to reinstall our new ball joints, and we'll start with a lower one. So grab your lower ball joint and put it into place. And with it, with mine anyway, it came with installation adapter. And that'll just go right around there. And then you're going to want to find a piece from your ball joint kit that'll fit nicely around this ring. And that one fits pretty good. And then we're going to use this piece to go on top. And make sure you're not touching your threads on your ball joint. You don't want to be pressing on that. We want to be pressing on this ring. So this one fits good. So we're going to go with that. So we'll get this all set up and ready to go. And at the end here, where the ball joint's going to come through, you're going to want a little cup just because it does come past the spindle. And we're going to put a new snap ring on it once we get it installed here. Okay, and then we're just going to make sure everything's nice and straight. Looks pretty good. Okay, so this piece might be just a little too small for what we want to use it for. It looks like we're kind of hitting there. So we'll just find a little bigger cup to put on the end. Quick. Go like that. And we're going again. Alright guys, it'll be about the same process with the upper. You just want to put on that installation ring that they give you. Find something that'll fit. This one's a little too big, if you can see that. So we don't want to use that one because it could bind up. Here, this one will work pretty good. So we'll use this guy. This came from our expansion kit. And as you can see, using this piece, it gets a little bit long, so I can't quite fit my other end in that I want to use. So I'm just going to take this piece of flat iron, I'll put it right there so the press can push on something, and then once my ball joint hits that piece of flat iron, I'll be able to fit this. It'll give me a little bit more clearance. Okay. Now we will switch over to our cup since we made a little bit more room to use it. Then we'll hit it again. Alright, so our ball joints are in, ready to go. At this point you can go ahead and throw in your grease zerk on your lower ball joint. The upper ball joint, I'm actually just going to keep the plug in because when I did my other side and I put that angled grease zerk in, it actually hit my drive shaft and sheared it off. Luckily I caught it when I was just spinning the wheel when I was done, but unfortunately I had to take it all apart so I could get the plug in. So if you have a Dodge Ram like I do, second gen, you might want to just leave the plug in because it may hit your drive shaft and cause you to tear apart everything again. It was not very fun. Alright guys, so the next thing we're going to do before we put everything back together is replace our U-joint on our axle. And I'll show you guys how to do that without a press. I do have a press, but I know most of you guys probably don't have a press. So I'll show you the technique on how to get this out with just using a hammer and, of course, a few sockets. So the first step is to take all 4 retaining clips off. This is what they'll look like when you get them out. And the best way to get it is with a hammer and chisel. You just want to find the end of the clip and just start hammering until it pops out. You might need to give the tops a couple whacks just to break that retaining clip loose. So after a little bit of hitting, it's finally starting to go. They can be rusted in there pretty well. You just got to kind of be persistent with them. They will come. Like I said, if you're having troubles, just hit the top of the U-joint and then hit the actual shaft and it'll break all that rust loose. There's one, and we'll just do the same thing on all the other sides. Alright, so I got all 4 of my clips out. Now we're ready to start hammering the U-joint out. What you're going to need next is a socket that will fit around the cap without touching it, yet small enough where it rests all the way around on the drive shaft. And then you'll need a socket that fits on the cap and will go through the drive shaft. Check this side. You can see it's starting to come loose now. Alright, see there, it's coming even more. We're pretty close. At this point I want to put my socket on and hit my socket so I'm not scuffing up the drive shaft too bad. Okay, there we got it, and you can go ahead, flip it over, and we'll just take this cap off, just like that. Alright, so this is what we got so far. Basically it's just the same process for each cap, so maybe we'll do this one next, doesn't really matter. Put it on your big socket so it can go through, and then just start hitting. Alright, got another one out. So basically we got this cap off. by hitting this cap through. Now we're gonna line it back up and hit that cap back through and take it off. And we'll do the same for this one too. So you'll see what I mean. And just to make it easier, we can put a little bit of PB blaster on it. Make sure you get a good start. You don't want to go in crooked or anything stupid like that. Okay, I got it started there. It looks pretty straight, so we'll just keep hammering here. Okay, we're just about flush now. So we're gonna want to go ahead and grab our big socket again and set it right on top, and then just keep hammering. Just take this cap off, and our U-joint is out. So at this point, you can grab your new U-joint, open it up, and it should be exactly the same. Here's our new retaining clip, so you don't want to reuse these old rusty ones. And then, of course, we got the new U-joint. First thing you want to do is take all the caps off our new U-joint, and then just pull right out, and then make sure you don't lose any of those needle bearings in there. So we'll pull them out and we'll set them aside. Alright, so all of the caps are taken off. Just toss your U-joint in there. It doesn't really matter what shaft you start with. I'm just starting with a longer one. It's a little easier to hold. Then you're going to want to grab your cap and put it on your U-joint. Alright, and then make sure it's straight. And then you're just going to tap your axle shaft about right there. Check. Okay. Once you got it started, you can go ahead and put your other cap on top. And a little trick here to get it started straight is to slide your U-joint out from the bottom and make sure it slides in the top nice and easy, and just split the difference there, just so you know that you're not binding up in this cap and we're nice and straight all the way through. Now we can just put this back on the bench and keep hitting right here and get this guy all the way in. And we can even tap this a little bit too to get this started more. And if you look closely, you can kind of see the groove where I need to put my snap ring on. And it looks like I have to go just a little bit more, so we'll set it on the table and then just give her a couple taps on the cap. Then check, and it looks like we can fit our snap rings on. And if you look at this one, I'm not all the way in the groove, so I'm going to give her a couple more hits, and then it should snap into place. Now we can just do the same exact thing and add the other drive shaft. Grab a new cap and start it out on the bottom here. I'm just going to give it a few taps just to start it. Okay. Then we'll add our last cap. And make sure we're straight. Everything's lining up. we'll check to see, yep, we can get our snap rings on. So guys, throw in your last 2 snap rings and our U-joint is in and good to go. Alright, so right here we have our driver's side wheel bearing and hub assembly, and then the new rotor to go along with that. And I just want to show you guys how these fit together and how to press in those studs for your lug nuts. It's not too hard, but you will need a shop press. And basically all you got to do, I'm going to try to do this one-handed here, holding the camera together. We'll feed the wire through the rotor, just like so. And then you just got to line up the cutout with the rotor to the wheel bearing shape. It just drops in like that, and then just line up your holes. And then that's all we got to do. And we'll take this over to the press, and I'll show you how to do that. We'll just press in each lug, 8 total. The perfect way to do this without struggling whatsoever, I'm putting a bunch of sockets around each stud. So when you press it down, everything stays nice and level and you're not fighting anything. Alright, so I'm on my last stud to press in. As you can see, there's my metal plate I put in there. It's working pretty good, so we'll go ahead and get this last one in. And then this is ready to be put back on the pickup. And there we go, guys. All done. So you can see, she's ready to go back on. Alright, so we're back over here at the pickup. The first thing we can do is throw in our spindle. Alright, so we'll start torquing down our ball joints. We'll start with the lower, we'll go 45 foot-pounds, and we'll go 70 foot-pounds on the top, and we'll finish off with 150 on the bottom. I'm going to do a final torque on the lower ball joint at 150 foot-pounds. Okay, ball joints are in, feels good. Now we'll just put our cotter pin on the top, and then we'll move on. So next we'll throw in our axle, and just give it a hose down with some brake cleaner, just so we don't have any dirt on it. And this just slides right in, and you should feel the splines line up. Then you'll know you're in all the way. Just like that. Alright guys, so next we'll be putting the hub back on. That can be a little tricky with just one person. Make sure you get that ABS line routed right away. So first thing we want to do is we want to take this spacer, and it goes just like that. You can kind of tell from the wear marks. And then just go behind and throw in one of your bolts. And then we'll throw another one in just to hold that spacer lined up with the holes. Okay. And then you got your other piece right here. You can just leave it in there. I won't mess with that. And then it looks like your ABS line is where it should be. So we'll leave that. And basically we just got to muscle up there and then make sure that your ABS line goes through this little slot here in the spindle. At the same time, we got to line up this wind. And then you just want to try to start one of your bolts that you got in. Hopefully it threads. If not, you'll have to take it off and line it up again. Alright guys, I think I finally got it here. It's a little bit of messing around, but alright, I finally got it on. I just got to tighten all my bolts up. You just got to be persistent with it and patient. It's a little tricky to do by yourself, but I'll just go ahead and tighten all 4 bolts up, and then we'll move on. Alright guys, so I got all 4 of those bolts tightened up. You just got to remember to tighten kind of in a sequence. So I did like a top, then a bottom, then a top, and then bottom. Just keep going because you're actually pulling your hub into your spindle and kind of pressing it in. So once you tighten one up, check to see if the other one's loosened up. So just keep going around and around till they're all nice and tight. So next we'll just throw in our tie rod, and then we'll throw in some new brake pads and then put the caliper back on, put the tire on, and then we're done. And we don't want to forget to put on our axle nut. And the torque spec for the axle nut is 175 foot-pounds. I just want to throw a cotter pin in. And now we can toss in our new brake pads and then throw the caliper on. But before we put our new brake pads in, we're going to want to compress our brake cylinder so we can get it back onto the rotor. So make sure you have your brake reservoir cap off when you do this. And we should be ready for new pads. Alright, so we got the new brake pads in, if you guys can see that. And now we can just put our caliper right back on. Alright guys, so we got the caliper on. I'm just going to go ahead and tighten both the bolts, and then I'll put the wheel on, and then this job is done.